what war could result in. You rightly mentioned that we are at a cusp of, we don't know whether the war is going to further escalate, and if it further escalates, what happens? At the moment, immediately, Indian rupee has taken a hit. It has touched 83.28 against dollar, which is just 0.1% shy of its all-time low of 83.29, which means rupee definitely taking a hit at this point.
So rupee is taking a beating, not a very massive beating also, because what the RBI has done by way of intervening. Now what happens in a typical war-like scenario, especially one which is ongoing in the Middle East right now, is that, of course, we are talking about crude. So crude is the main sort of, export for the region. And almost all countries, including India, are importers of crude oil emerging from Saudi Arabia, emerging from the Middle East. And after the sanctions on Russia, India and China were among the only two large economies which continue to buy cheaper oil from Russia. But that's not the case for Europe, that's not the case for US. So US and Europe continue to be dependent on oil produced in the Middle East. Now, with oil prices going high, and in fact Brent breaching the $90 mark yesterday, it has come down within the 90, below the 90 threshold again. But with a $90 plus rate that it commanded yesterday, we've seen the US dollar index surge to 106.5. And this was an index which was hovering in the range of about 100. And we've seen that go up about 6.5% at 106.5. Now, as a result of that, US 10-year bonds are seeing higher yields at about 7.3%. Now, this has a direct impact on the rupee. Rupee as a currency becomes less lucrative. Now, what the RBI has done is it has intervened by selling as much as about $3.8 billion of its forex holdings in terms of US dollars back into the US. Now, it has tried to curb it because RBI says that if it had not intervened, prices could have gone to their all-time low of about 84 to a dollar. So, rupee still continues to be at about 83.28, but more forex selling cannot be ruled out at this stage. Remember, again, I think it all comes down to the fact that we are in a run-up to the election season, and all sorts of prices will have to be tamed. Now, LPG subsidy has already been given, right? It is unlikely that rising crude prices are going to get passed on to customers by way of higher fuel prices. OMCs are going to take some beating on and will have to take the shocks on their chin. And at the same time, even the rupee devaluation against the dollar is going to be bad news for investors looking at parking their money in India. So, it's both the fiscal policy and the monetary policy will have to work in sync with each other at a time when any sort of negative data emerging from India, any sort of pressure felt on Indian stocks, Indian treasury bonds, or the G-Secs as we call them, or even inflation numbers which could have a direct or indirect impact on GDP. Any negative narrative emerging from India could spell bad news for FII investments into India and not spell good news for election year coming ahead.
All right. And what is the immediate impact of rupee depreciation on consumers in India? I mean, for one, it becomes difficult for you to go out, not just to study, but also to on a vacation, on a holiday. All of that impacts consumers.
Yeah, of course. I mean, for affluent consumers who want to travel abroad
or to study abroad,
then I think 0.2%, 0.3%, even up to a 1 rupee percent is not going to make too much of a difference, because how much are you going to go and shop abroad? I think your tickets.
And how about those who are wanting to go to study? I think that they take a direct hit.
Of course. I think anything. It depends on what socioeconomic strata you're from, and if you have the ability to study abroad, it is going to make a slight dent to what you eventually end up paying when you convert it back to INR.
Absolutely.
So, but otherwise, I think 83 is a level that we have seen and we have become comfortable with. A 30 paisa increase on that is actually not going to make or mar ambitions of Indians traveling abroad, either for leisure or for education or even for healthcare, which is essential for that matter. But overall, I think it is more a story of sentiment, more a story of headlines emerging that rupee is at its lowest ebb. Right. And that is bad news. And anything beyond 84, the mental threshold or the mental sort of makeup that, oh, rupee is now at 84, not in 83 point whatever decimals, is just sentimentally and emotionally not a great number to be at.
Absolutely. And just 1 paisa shy of its all-time low at 83.29. Rupee, of course, continued to take a beating. But since we are on war and the implications of war, one of the implications of war is misinformation, disinformation, and everything that is transpiring on social media has a huge impact on sentiments on ground as the war continues to escalate. More and more people are fleeing out of Gaza. 1 million people are expected to have already come out